from the legacy Dynamics 365 for Outlook add-in to the modern Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. This guide will help you to understand why the legacy Outlook add-in is deprecated, understand the transitioning process, help develop a strategy for discussions and the transition, ensure a smooth transition in terms of project, but also change management with your users, manage inquiries and potential objections effectively with an FAQ that we'll discuss at the end of this presentation, and also pointers so that you can find the resources that will support the process. So we'll tackle this in 4 parts. First, with a focus on the app for Outlook to really understand the latest capabilities we have deployed for the app for Outlook. And this is an area of continuous investment for Microsoft. We'll also compare the Outlook add-in and app for Outlook to help customers understand how to transition for each of the features, then how to actually operate that transition from the add-in to the app for Outlook, and then review some of the frequently asked questions. On top of that, of course, we'll try to address any question that you raise during that presentation so that we can help you. So as an introduction, one of the key strengths of Dynamics 365 has always been its tight integration with the Office applications, especially with Outlook, where users can track customer interactions against records that are in Dynamics 365. The Outlook add-in is relying on deprecated technology and has been known to affect the client machine's performance while also being complex for customers to deploy and update. We've introduced in 2015 and continuously updated since then a modern app for Outlook, which is now on par functionally with the Outlook add-in, while also bringing additional capabilities, such as seamless deployment, availability across desktop, web, and mobile, and that runs on the unified interface, which is the latest and soon the only supported user interface for your Dynamics 365 apps. So first, let's discuss what's in the app for Outlook. So you may already know it, but it's good to review some of the core features. So the app for Outlook allows you to view contextual information about Dynamics 365 contacts, leads, records while you're working in Outlook without having your CRM opened in the browser and Outlook opened in the background. You can view everything in the context. So you can view this info in the context of an email message, a meeting, or appointment. So for example, you can view phone numbers, company name, job title, last and next activities, and recent records right from the app for Outlook within Outlook without having to leave Outlook. It also allows, of course, users to track email messages, meetings, and appointments to record in Dynamics 365 in a single click. You can open Dynamics 365 records directly from the app to find or enter more detailed information. You can add seamlessly phone call, tasks, or appointments to Dynamics 365 records right from the app. You can create new records using the quick create feature. And also you can use some of the productivity features that help users use email templates that you've configured in Dynamics 365, knowledge articles or sales literature documents in your new emails that you send in Outlook, right from Outlook by using all of the templates and documents or KB articles that have been configured in Dynamics 365. And last, on the Outlook desktop, you can also track your address book contacts so that your contacts are also reflected from Outlook to Dynamics 365 and have a synchronization in place between the records. This is what you used to get with the Outlook add-in. So scrambling to find context and relevance, you would have to search manually across systems because, as you can see, even if the issue is tracked in Dynamics 365, you don't get much information about who's the person who has sent you that email. While now, with the app for Outlook, just by pinning the app, opening the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook, as in the shown screenshot, you can immediately see, even though the email has not been tracked yet, you can see that the sender, Teddy Cornero in that case, has been recognized. And you immediately see some context information about them, what their job title are, their phone number, who's their owner in Dynamics 365, what the account they work for, and this is customizable. So you get immediately some contextual information about this, and you can drill into that information, for example, by opening the contact record to see the full form, just like you would if you were on the web version or on your mobile app. What you can also do when you receive an email from an unknown contact is your ability to quickly create them as a new contact in your Dynamics 365 or as a new lead or new account to create new data in Dynamics 365, leveraging the data that you have in Outlook, for example, without having to retype the email address. When you have that integration in place, you can also add tasks, appointments, and phone calls to the related records that an email, for example, is tracked against, like in the screenshot. And it's also available on mobile. So when you are on your smartphone, be it iOS or Android smartphones, you can, when you're on an email in the Outlook mobile app, trigger the Dynamics 365 app and then access the same context and capabilities as you have when you are on the desktop or on the Outlook web access. In Outlook desktop, there's also an option to track contacts from your address book directly to send them to Dynamics 365. And what's great, once you do the link between a contact from your local contact address book in Outlook to Dynamics 365, is that any update for the synchronized fields that you have configured, any update that you do in Outlook is reflected in Dynamics 365 and vice versa. So if you share contacts with other people in the organization, if you update, for example, a mobile phone number, this will get reflected for everyone if they use the same contact. You can also track appointments, of course, in Outlook, and the same mechanisms as in the email are leveraged, like this little window for the Dynamics 365 integration. There are some new features that helps really bridge the gap with the Outlook command-in. These were introduced earlier this year. This is the delegate access in the app for Outlook. What it allows you to do is to give someone permission to act on your behalf. So that's typically the case when you have, for example, an assistant that need to create and respond to an email or a meeting request for you, and so that to make sure that they can also track these items into the common data service using the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. This integration is customizable to a certain extent. So as seen in the screenshot in the lower part of the screen, you can customize the regarding card. So that means, like, for example, here, the contact Teddy Cornero that we have recognized. We can update the information we want to display. So for example, maybe instead of the phone number, I want to see who's the salesperson responsible for that contact in my CRM. So I can update the fields here. I can customize the entities that appear in the quick create experience, because I can also customize the regarding lookups to add or remove entities, so that maybe I just want to track emails against specific types of records. So I can also customize this. You can expand the fields search in regarding lookup. You can ensure emails and appointments are tracked with a mandatory regarding recording app for Outlook. And you can also filter entities and views that appear in the app for Outlook. So overall, this is done in the exact same way as you would with a model-driven app. It's a form of PowerApps, and that can be done in customizations. What's also good if you switch to the app for Outlook is that the only way to synchronize emails and appointments, etc., is server-side synchronization. And with server-side synchronization, you can also benefit from additional capabilities, such as the ability, the tracking to Dynamics 365 using categories. So just by applying a category to an email, an appointment, or a task, that triggers the synchronization of those records from Outlook to Dynamics 365. So that's very convenient to track items in bulk or with a minimum of user actions. We can also use the tracking folders capabilities. So that's just a way of having folders in Outlook that are mapped to Dynamics 365 records. And the fact of putting any item in those folders, be it email, appointment, or tasks, means that they get automatically synchronized in Dynamics 365 against those records, such as shown in the screenshots. Now, in terms of comparison between the Outlook command-in and Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. In terms of user experience, first, you have already a big gap because the Outlook command-in was built on really legacy technologies that were available in the early year 2003 when it was introduced, whereas the app for Outlook is web-based and offers it's lightweight using and contextual and displays using the unified interface. In terms of history, as I just said, the Outlook command-in was introduced with technologies from 2003. It was actually introduced with the first version of Dynamics CRM at the time. And whereas the app for Outlook was introduced with more modern technologies in 2015, when the web-based add-ins could be created and added to Outlook. And ever since its introduction in 2015, it got continuous investments from the product group and improvements, and it's been translated to the unified interface in 2017. It's got enhancements at the app level last year, and this year it got delegate access support. And we are continuing to improve the integration to really have optimal stability, lightweight performance for our customers. Whereas the legacy add-in always had challenges, it was always a challenge for our customers to deploy and operate. And we restricted the offline support last year, and we will stop supporting the legacy Outlook command-in by the end of the year on October 1st, 2020. As a reminder, this only applies to online customers. For on-premise customers, the Outlook command-in support lifecycle is actually tied to the related on-premise product lifecycle. So if you have CRM 2016 on-prem, the Outlook command-in for CRM 2016 will be supported as long as the related on-premise product is supported. Now, in terms of technologies that were used to create those two Outlook integrations, so the Outlook COM add-in was based on COM VSTO technology. So it's a legacy Outlook integration model without any active development. On the other hand, the app for Outlook is cross-platform Office add-in model, and it's web-based. It's also the Outlook command-in also has a dependency on the legacy web client, which is deprecated and will stop working after December 1st, 2020, whereas the app for Outlook uses the unified interface to render records. The command-in depends on SQL Server Compact 4.0, which has an end of extended support next year, while the app for Outlook doesn't have dependencies on end-of-life features. In terms of performance, the Outlook command-in is known to affect the client machine's performance, slowing down Outlook when it launches or the client machine overall, whereas the app for Outlook offers a lightweight integration. The command-in only supported Windows and Outlook Desktop, while the app for Outlook supports Windows and Mac OS. It also supports the Outlook Web Access and smartphone and tablet on iOS and Android. In terms of deployment, the command-in required to be installed on each client machine, so each user had to install the command-in either manually or through scripted deployments. It was always expensive to deploy and support whenever a user had issues with the command-in, whereas the app for Outlook is centrally deployed and distributed and offers an easy deployment and delivery model where the app for Outlook configuration can be automated, so any eligible user can get the app for Outlook automatically. In terms of security, the Outlook command-in had full access in client machine with native code as it was installed locally as a software. And the app for Outlook runs in a sandbox mode with the access is done through the standard office.js API. Now, feature-wise, this is a comparison matrix between app for Outlook and Outlook command-in. In terms of deployment and available platforms, as we discussed, the app for Outlook offers really many improvements, such as one-click install with a server-driven deployment. It runs on unified interface. It offers a role-based access, which allows to decide what users have the app for Outlook and what users don't based on their security role. You can automate the deployment. You can customize the integration to offer a contextual view of the records you want in Dynamics 365. And it's available in Outlook Web Access, Outlook for Mac, and Outlook Mobile. In terms of core capabilities, you can, just like for the command-in, you're able to track and set regarding for emails, appointments, and also contacts. You could work offline with the Outlook command-in, and this is not a feature that is supported with the app for Outlook, just because of the technology behind it. It's not meant to work offline. But as we go later in this presentation, we'll show you alternative solutions that are available. It both offered delegate access and offer the ability to track tasks and have a one-click set regarding. One of the things that is on the roadmap is the ability to track multiple items against a single record. That was something you could do in the Outlook command-in. And you cannot really do that yet in the app for Outlook, although you can achieve something similar with folder tracking and also to some extent with category tracking, because you can then synchronize multiple items to Dynamics 365 just by assigning a category. The Outlook command-in didn't allow to have contextual information, so you couldn't see the recipient's summary, whereas you can in the app for Outlook. In the app for Outlook, you can also go much further than that, view and create CRM records. Just like also with the command-in, you can also insert email templates, sales literature, and KB articles. You can use custom forms and business logic as well for both. And there are two dependent features that are also going to be removed with the command-in and that you need to be aware of. It's the word mail merge feature that was already deprecated, but that will no longer be available if you just have the app for Outlook. And same for the Excel dynamic worksheet or pivot table that were available for download from Dynamics 365. These cannot be replaced with the app for Outlook, but we'll show you alternative solutions that are also available here. Now, in terms of transition, that's where we're going to discuss how to move from being on the command-in to the app for Outlook. So you first need to determine a transition path. Either you want to go first with a targeted user group that allows an incremental approach with a production pilot of users. So the benefits are it's easier to get started. The end user impact is minimized as transition is done in waves. And the areas impacted by issues or gaps can be avoided. So of course, if you have a gap in your business processes, it's always easier to address this if it's just impacting a low number of users. And that allows also your team to learn from experience with the pilot. The drawback is that you have 2 integrations to support and maintain. And users who are still on the Outlook come add-in do not get the performance and usability benefits from the app for Outlook. Or you can also go for the full transition, so in the big bang approach. So that way you have a single integration between Outlook and Dynamics 365 to support and maintain, and all users get the performance and usability benefits at the same time. The drawback is that, of course, it's riskier. If there are any issues or gaps, they really need to be considered before doing the migration. So that means really testing with your key users, your business scenarios. And then there are also the case for on-premise customers who are migrating online. For those customers, they will also have to leave the COM add-in behind and adopt the app for Outlook. The benefit is that because the app for Outlook also uses the unified interface, it will be also a good reason to move to the unified interface in one go. So for the web experience, but also for the app for Outlook experience. And the end user impact is reduced as change management is expected anyway with these types of migration, especially by migrating also to the unified interface. One consideration is that adding the transition to Dynamics 365 App for Outlook does add to the migration workload, but it is offset by less deployment complexity and maintenance complexity that was the Outlook COM add-in. Now, how to get from the initial stages to the final go live for the transition from the app COM add-in to the App for Outlook. So first, you need to assess your technical landscape, and that goes. You need to go through the requirements to operate the app for Outlook. So this can impact the version of Windows, Outlook, Exchange. To some extent, it can also impact your form scripts. If necessary, plan and perform the required updates based on that assessment. You also need to identify your functional use cases. You need to map the used functionalities with app for Outlook capabilities. And if there are any gaps, you need to identify workarounds and new alternatives for these processes. We advise you then to configure and test the app for Outlook on a sandbox environment, to perform user acceptance testing, and then to communicate and train your users on the app for Outlook. And then for the production go live, switch the configuration and deploy to your users. That also means that one step is to install the app, uninstall the Outlook COM add-in from the client machines, and to update your new user onboarding process. So in terms of technical landscape, these are the 4 main areas that you need to focus on. Because it's working with server-side synchronization, you need to have a look at the Exchange version that you are operating. You need to look at the desktop OS version, the Outlook version, and also your supported browser versions. So all of this documentation is available online, and we've put the links at the bottom of those slides for reference. But these are the email server, email client, and browser requirements. So you need to be on Exchange Server 2013, CU14 or greater, or use Exchange Online, of course. In terms of email client, you need to be at least on Outlook 2013 in the specified version or higher. And we really recommend to go higher because in the following slides we'll show that not all features are available on older version of Outlook. And in terms of browser, the minimum version is Internet Explorer 11. The supported configurations with Microsoft Exchange are hybrid, so you can be online customer having Exchange online with Office 365, or you can have an Exchange server on-premise version, this version or greater. And the same applies for on-premise customers, although this presentation really focuses more for online customers rather than on-premise customers. For some additional requirements for consuming Exchange application, so you need to enable OAuth authentication in Exchange, and also you need to make sure that Internet Explorer 11 is installed. It doesn't need to be the default browser, of course, but it needs to be installed. In terms of feature support per client, it's important to be aware that the best parity is achieved with Outlook 2016 and higher. This especially applies to having access to the address book contacts part of Outlook, where you can choose what contacts you want to synchronize to Dynamics 365. This is only available for Outlook 2016 and above. In terms of tracking emails, this is supported on all configuration, and then and not for new emails, not for Mac, and not for the app on mobile, Outlook mobile. And the mobile Outlook app doesn't support tracking appointments. This is due to a limitation with the current version of the Outlook app that doesn't allow Office 365 add-ins for appointments. But it's a very frequent feature request that we receive. Now, in terms of browser, a few recommendations. If you're using Internet Explorer 11 or Microsoft Edge, there are some recommendations in terms of settings that you want to make sure are enabled, and websites that are trusted to make sure the integration is seamless. And if you're using Chrome or Firefox, we recommend the latest version on Windows. And for Apple Safari, we recommend version 9 or 10 on Mac or on OS 10, Mac OS 10. These are the supported languages. I won't go through the list, but it's available online. And one last bit that we briefly discussed earlier, we want you to validate your custom form scripting to make sure they will render well in the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. As we said, it's using the unified interface. So you should test that your forms render well in the app for Outlook. And one general recommendations that we have is that you use the PowerApps solution checker to check your customizations. It can check your code, custom scripts, and make you some recommendations on what could potentially break and make recommendations on the risks you need to mitigate. Now, if necessary, plan and perform required updates. So that applies to Microsoft Exchange, Outlook, Windows, and the browser you're using. And also, what's important to do is also to at least make sure that your forms that are displayed in the app for Outlook render well in the unified interface. So this is why it's the minimum action that you need to do, is to test all use cases inside of Dynamics 365 app for Outlook experience to make sure that whenever you open a record in the app for Outlook, it renders well, because it's been reviewed in unified interface. The best action, of course, to do is to do a complete full migration to unified interface. This is, I think, mandatory this year for all customers, as the legacy web client will no longer be available after December 1st, 2020. We also have created a presentation and several playbooks that you can download at the links that we show here. Now, so then customers need to identify their functional use cases. So really, it's an introspection exercise to see what features related to Dynamics 365 for Outlook are your users currently using, and see then what you need to focus on when you're going to test the app for Outlook. These are the same items that we covered earlier. Then do a mapping between the old Command-in capabilities and new App for Outlook capabilities or alternative solution. So if you were using the Dynamics 365 for Outlook Command-in to synchronize appointments, contacts, and tasks, and to send emails, the new coverage for this is server-side synchronization. This will also allow users to synchronize data between Dynamics 365 and Outlook without having them to open up Outlook and doing the synchronization from their client machine. This will be done server to server from Exchange to Dynamics 365. To track and set regarding for emails and appointments, this will be done in the app for Outlook. To do that for tasks, you can use category tracking in Outlook and then set regarding in Dynamics 365. To track contacts from your address book and associate them with accounts in Dynamics 365, you can use the app for Outlook. So on Outlook Desktop 2016 and above. In terms of productivity, to convert an email to an opportunity, you should track the email to a new opportunity. Convert email to lead. You can use Quick Create the sender as a lead if it's an unknown sender, and that will create a lead. Or you can track the email to a new lead, and that will create a lead as well. How to convert an email to a case? You just have to track the email to a new case. And there are also ways like to pre-fill information, for example, about the case title that will be using the email subject, things like that. That can be trigger. You can add connection to an email. So for that, this is done in Dynamics 365. It's no longer something that you can do directly from the app for Outlook. But here I'm talking really about the concept of connections, so the ability to link records with a connection record in Dynamics 365, but that was really not primary use case of the Command-in, so I don't think it's going to impact many, if any, customer at all. In order to browse Dynamics 365 data within Outlook navigation pane, well, you just have to open Dynamics 365 records from Dynamics 365 app for Outlook, or you can use the web access or Dynamics 365 for tablet to browse the records. But you can browse data in Dynamics 365 right from the app for Outlook. To work offline, the new coverage is the Dynamics 365 app that's available today on iOS and Android, but we'll discuss that later. We also have plans and current work to make that work also on the Windows 10 tablet application. To import contacts in bulk, you can use the standard Excel import feature in Dynamics 365. To insert email templates, sales literature, and KB articles, this is native with the app for Outlook. And now for some of the dependent features, for example, Word mail merge. You can use SSRS reports in Dynamics 365, document templates, and also Power Automate, and we'll discuss that in more details in a bit. And for dynamic worksheet and pivot table, you can use the PowerApps Excel add-in, or you can use also Power Query in Excel to retrieve data dynamically from Dynamics 365 and the Common Data Service. So let's deep dive on this alternative for a bit. To work offline, so as I said, you need to install the Dynamics 365 for phones and tablets applications. As of March 2020, offline feature is only available for iOS and Android devices, but we are working on the Windows 10 app offline. That's currently ongoing with very active developments. To use the mobile offline feature, so you just need the latest version of the app, and you can follow the link to configure this offline mode. You can, for more advanced scenarios where you want to develop more custom applications and implement your own offline scheduling engine, you can also explore Canvas applications. But the offline mode, again, is only supported for iOS and Android devices for Canvas apps. And then you also can go for third-party providers or ISVs that offer offline capabilities for Dynamics 365 on Windows 10. So these are also an option. For mail merge documents, so as a reminder, it's been deprecated since 2018, so it's been 2 years now that they've been deprecated. You can either go with SSRS reports, which is a native capability in Dynamics 365. You can develop them from scratch, or you can use the report wizard to get started for the reports. You can export them as Word files. You can run a report against multiple records. So these are a convenient way also to create multiple Word documents. If you want to generate Word documents, you can also use the standard document templates in Dynamics 365. With one click, users can generate standardized documents automatically populated with Dynamics 365 data. One of the limitations is that it's a per record action, so documents can be generated one record at a time, or that's how it works, at least out of the box. And then you have a great option as well, which is Power Automate, because the Word Online connector for Power Automate lets you work with Word files. And there is an action called Populate a Microsoft Word template that reads the Word template and then fills the template fields with selected dynamic values from Dynamics 365 data. So that's also a great way to create Word documents in bulk using your Common Data Service data and modern integration patterns with Power Automate. For Excel Dynamic Worksheet and Pivot Table, there are two alternatives we want to discuss with you. You have the Microsoft PowerApps Office add-in. And with this, in PowerApps, you can open entity data in Microsoft Excel. You can edit the data and refresh the data from Excel back to Dynamics 365. This requires at least Microsoft Excel 2016. But this is how it's done, and we put at the bottom the link for more information on that capability. You can also use a standard feature in Excel if you want to refresh data from Excel from Dynamics 365 to Excel. You can use, you have a data tab in Excel, and if you click on Get Data from Online Services, you can choose Dynamics 365 Online. Enter the URL, and then you're able to select the entities you're interested in and get the data directly to Excel. And you can refresh those data so that they reflect the latest data that you have in your CRM. Once that's done and you're ready to move on with your test, you should configure the app for Outlook on the sandbox environment. For that, you need to configure server-side synchronization and configure the app for Outlook for a test user. You should remove the legacy Dynamics 365 for Outlook command-in for that test user and then test your business scenarios and customizations. Be mindful that if you're already using server-side synchronization, a user can only be synchronized with one environment, one organization. So if your test user is a production user, if you're going to set him up on a test environment, he will no longer be able to synchronize data with the production environment during those tests unless you configure that user back on production. That's an opportunity then to also identify gaps. So any business process that needs to be addressed in a different way, any potential regressions, and also identify user pain points that could lead to optimizations from a customization point of view or process point of view, but also specific training. And that's also a good opportunity to spot positive experiences to build up the value proposition of the transition, because there's a lot of things that can be done more quickly with the app for Outlook and with more contextual information in the app for Outlook. And that helps sell the project internally to your users. And also that helps you spot any potential optimization for a smoother transition. Then perform user acceptance testing. So really validate that your business users can use the app for Outlook by performing end-to-end testing on processes where Outlook integration and Exchange integrations are involved. Also consider testing any scenario where Dynamics 365 for Outlook was required, for example, the Excel integration or the Word mail merge. Those are a bit on the side, but it's important that you cover them as well in your tests and learn from these tests to fine-tune the Outlook integration scenarios and see this as an opportunity to update or create relevant training content. Then communicate and test and train your users. So important to communicate early on the changes that are coming, focus on the productivity enhancements and benefits of the transition, encourage and listen to feedback from your users, update your training documentations so that if you have screenshots of the Outlook command in, I think this should be updated to more modern screenshots. Train your users. So I believe that the impact should be relatively low for your users because it's fairly a new, straightforward process. But it's important that with communications and some training that your users are aware of the new how to do their specific tasks right from Outlook. And this can be done through online documentations, on-site training, or through webinars. Don't forget your onboarding process for new employees. It's important to also to refresh them if you had specific trainings for new users. Important aspect is to also make sure your support users are aware of those changes and that make sure that they are ready for the app for Outlook. And also consider having local power users for level 1 support. From experience, we've seen that the number of issues with the app for Outlook is far less than with the Outlook command in. So this should actually help your support organization focus on more important tasks. And also don't forget to celebrate success based on the user feedback and the measured outcomes of the app for Outlook. Don't forget to celebrate success of this transition. On the switch and deploy part, you need to focus on these 4 areas. So first, of course, migrate to unified interface or at least test the specific scenarios for the app for Outlook app module so that they render well in the unified interface. And then you need to set the default server profile to server-side synchronization, update the user mailboxes to use the new server profile, enable user security roles to make sure they have access to the app for Outlook, and deploy the app for Outlook to users. So first, setting the server-side synchronization as the default server profile is done in your settings, in the system settings. So you need to remove any action that is Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Outlook method. You need to update it to server-side synchronization as shown in the screenshot and save the settings. You need to update the mailbox synchronization profiles in Dynamics 365. So you can do that in bulk for all of your users. So it can be a fairly straightforward action in your deployment. You just need to go to settings, email configuration, go to mailboxes and go to active mailboxes. And then you can select apply default email configuration. And you check, you can check if you want to apply it to all users. You need to check like all records on all pages in the current view. And to be and with this extra tip, like to be sure to check test email configuration options. That way, this will perform a single test to make sure that everything works nicely for your users. You need to make sure that your users have access to the app for Outlook. So you need to go to security and to your users, manage roles for your users. And in the dialog that appears, make sure that the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook user security role is enabled for your users, or that they have an equivalent, at least access to that role or privilege or app to make sure that these users can see the app for Outlook. Deploy Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. So that step is done in settings, Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. There is an option to click add app for all eligible users. That way, it's automatically it's deployed for all users that appear in the subgrid as in the screenshot. And you can also check that box that automatically adds the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook to all eligible users. That way, whenever a user is configured with the right configuration for server-side synchronization, they automatically get the app for Outlook added for them without you having to do anything, as it's done automatically. If you want to set up the delegate access in the app for Outlook, you can do so. And in the org-db setting. So to do that, you need to access to the org-db org setting tool. You need to install that in your environment. We've put the link at the bottom. And then you need to set a specific setting to true. And that setting is track appointments from non-organizers and also delegate access enabled. And both of these should be set to true. And then you have support for delegate access. One of the steps is also to uninstall the COM add-in from the client machines. So that's either individual action from all of your users that need to go on their machine to the settings part, app and features, and uninstall Dynamics 365 for Microsoft Office Outlook. So really uninstall this from their machine. Or if you're using SCCM, you can do that in bulk, and you can do that by group policy. Then you need to update your new user onboarding procedure. So how you're going to approve emails, I think that should already be the case in your organization. For server-side synchronization, make sure that you test and enable mailbox for new users, and make sure that you add the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook for these users, and this can be automated. Next, we have a few frequently asked questions. So we have customers who are still on Outlook or Exchange 2010, will not be moving to the cloud. But what's important here to know is that Outlook and Exchange 2010 are going to be out of support by October 2020. So even without going to the cloud, they need to upgrade to a more recent version. If you are using the Outlook COM add-in for offline and you need to do so on a Windows device, we have offline coming for a Windows 10 application, and it's on the roadmap right now with active developments. And it will support expressions that mimic client-server plugins, but it's not exactly plugins. And it allows you to build a model-driven or Canvas app that works offline. If you need support for a delegate user to be able to go into Outlook and track appointments on other users' behalf, this is now supported, as I just explained a couple of slides ago, with delegate support. If you need support for dynamic spreadsheets, so users can work with Dynamics 365 views data in a spreadsheet on their machine, this can be done natively in Excel with Power Query, as I shown earlier, or with the also the PowerApps Office add-in, where you can access Dynamics 365 data from Excel, and that data being dynamic as you can refresh it. Are there any guidelines to be considered to track sent items? So we also have some good blog articles on the app for Outlook and how to track sent items. So you can refer to the article we mentioned here, but that's possible. If when creating a new case as the regarding record from a received email, you want to automatically pre-fill case details based on the email information, this can be achieved also by applying a setting to your environment. By the way, this setting should be enabled by default, I think, for all new environment. Otherwise, you can raise a support request to help you enable that setting for you. If you need to track multiple emails at a time so that users are productive in Outlook, that's an item that's on the roadmap. In the meantime, you can do so by using category tracking in bulk and then setting regarding via the app for Outlook one item at a time, or you can do so by using folder tracking. If you want to see emails that are sent from Dynamics 365 with server-side synchronization in the sent items folder in Outlook, same, this can be achieved by applying in setting to your environment. By the way, this setting will be turned on by default for all customers in the April-May timeframe of this year. If it's not the case or you want it earlier, you can also reach out to support to enable the setting that allows any email that is sent from Dynamics 365, not from Outlook, but that email to be reflected in the sent items folder in Outlook for your users. When you set up server-side synchronization, the appointment attendees will receive meeting invitations and also updates when you update your appointment in Dynamics 365. That's a normal behavior with server-side synchronization. Appointments in Dynamics 365 are considered meetings in Outlook, and hence they send meeting requests and updates. You can review the synchronized fields between Outlook and Dynamics 365 to see what triggers updates in Outlook. And there is also a setting that you can enable yourself to allow to save the appointments in Dynamics 365 as draft, which means they are not sent to Exchange and therefore not synchronized at all with Outlook. That means attendees don't receive any appointment invitation, but at the same time, that means that the appointment is not synchronized to the user's calendar in Outlook. Can Dynamics 365 app for Outlook be installed for users that use the Outlook command to track emails from a mailbox that is not tied to the same Dynamics 365 environment or even tenant? So the answer to that question is no. If you're using a different email account than the one that is set up for server-side synchronization, this won't work. This only works in the context of the delegate access for users that are also set up for server-side synchronization. So this is not a supported configuration. And if you have any issue with third-party Outlook add-ins that disable the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook add-in, you should reach out to the add-in provider that creates that conflict to require that they fix their add-in. And you can also reach out to support for guidance to see how you can mitigate that situation. So now the call to action is transition to the app for Outlook. Get started quickly because the deadline is October 1st, 2020. After that date, Microsoft will no longer support the Outlook command for online customers. You have some resources. So the official messaging that was posted, that's the blog article that was posted on the PowerApps blog on March 25th this year, where we explain our plan for the Outlook integration and the deprecation of the Outlook command with the deadline of October 1st. You also have a link to the official documentation for the app for Outlook. And you also have a useful app for Outlook